Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and in this video what I want to do is talk about testing. So basically, in the newer versions of Node, Node now has a built-in testing suite. So back in the, and still for the most part, people would use like libraries like Jest, Cypress, Mocha, Chai to run tests. And generally a lot of modern languages now have built-in test running suites because generally testing works the same way regardless what language you're using. Okay, it's more specifically I'm talking about what's called a unit test. So before we even actually write any tests and try out like the built-in Node testing library, which I haven't tried before, so this is gonna be a new experience for me too. But from what I read in the docs, it looks pretty much like writing something in Mocha or Chai or Jest or whatever. But bottom line is this: there's different types of problems that can happen with your code. Okay, and you try to prevent those things from happening. So the first kind of category of problem is a syntax error. You just, forgot a curly bracket, you forgot a parentheses, and that's going to result in the program not running. That's referred to as a runtime error when the code breaks when you're running it. Okay, generally like that's the worst thing that can happen. You don't want the code to break while you're running it because that would really suck for the user if the program just breaks. Okay, so you generally want to prevent that. Okay, so a good way to prevent syntax errors, okay, generally is through linting. Okay, so a linter is basically spell check for that particular language. Okay. So generally you'll hear about a library called ESLint, meaning ECMAScript lint for like JavaScript, because JavaScript's real name is ECMAScript. So essentially what that'll do is it'll just tell you, hey, you have these errors, and sometimes even clean up the syntax to keep the syntax consistent, depending on how you use it. But that's one way to get rid of errors. Okay, so there's syntax errors. The next category of errors are type errors. Okay, so this is where TypeScript would come in. Okay, so like let's just do an example of that. Okay, so see here. First, I'll write a TypeScript file just as an example. This is where using TypeScript instead of just plain JavaScript becomes really helpful. Okay, so we'll just call this add.ts. Okay, and then I'm going to actually create the same function in JavaScript so you can see like the issue. Okay, so if I were to write this function, add nums. Okay, and I just say x, y. Okay, add nums x, y. And then I just return x plus y. Okay, what's going to happen is that it's going to do exactly that. Now you can tell by the name of the function that I'm intending to add numbers here. But what if someone does this? Add nums 1, 1. Okay, well those aren't numbers. Okay, those are strings. Okay, so the idea here, the problem is I'm using the wrong data type, a type error. Okay, so I'm not going to get the result I think. I'm expecting that I'd get the result of 2. Instead, I'm going to get node add.js. I'm going to get 11. Okay, because it's adding the string of 1 to the string of 1, which is just 2 ones next to each other. Now, if I use TypeScript, okay, and I write that same function, so I'll say function add nums. When I say x, y, I need to type these arguments, okay? So it's like, okay, it's assuming it sees the other one, so I'm going to just change this name for a second. So we'll just call this s, add nums for a moment, so that way it stops complaining. Okay, add nums. So I want to say, hey, x is a number, y is a number. Okay, and then I can actually say, hey, this thing should return a number. Okay. And see, now it's complaining because there's no return value, and I said it should return a number. Okay, so I need to make sure I return x plus y, and because x and y are supposed to be numbers, it knows that this should, when you add two numbers together, it should be a number, so this all checks out. So TypeScript is able to tell me if there's a problem, not with only the way I define my function, but now when I use it, and I go add nums 1, 1, okay, so you can already see like my IDE is already giving me an error because TypeScript is going to pick up on this. But now watch what happens if I try to run it. So I'm going to use deno because that way I don't have to set up TypeScript with the whole like TypeScript compiler. I can just run it with deno. So node run add.ts. Okay. Oh, I didn't console log anything, but that should have. I think it's just because it's running it. Because I don't think it actually does. You do deno run. Does it run type checks at the time? No, it doesn't run it doesn't compile at the time. So this was a deno, no, deno compile would compile it to like a binary. Okay, but the idea is I can see, I still probably would run it against the want to run it against a TypeScript compiler. So I would do something like npx tsc, the TypeScript compiler, and then say, hey, I want to run add.ts, and see I get this error. Okay. Okay. Let's try this. Let's try if I do this add latest. Yeah, I'm not gonna go install TypeScript right now. Not the point of this lesson. Okay, but the idea is you can see that it's giving me an error. So that's the beauty of typing. With TypeScript, I can catch type errors before they're giving me problems. Because what's gonna happen here is that I would catch it. I wouldn't get a runtime error, but the idea is that in runtime, users are gonna be getting 11. Okay, and that's going to cause problems downstream, and I'm going to be wondering where that error is coming from, and it's because some function down the line is returning the wrong type of data or being given the wrong type of data. So TypeScript can help me catch those errors earlier. Okay, but what if I did this? Okay, so let's just get rid of the TypeScript file for now. Okay, what if this is my problem? Okay, so and now I do here 1 1. Okay, the function syntax is fine. Okay, this is proper JavaScript, so it's not a syntax error. Okay, you know, technically I'm giving it the right type of data, so it's receiving numbers, and it'll return a number. But go to node.js, I get 0, okay, because it's not adding the numbers as I expected. Okay, I wanted to add numbers together. It's doing the wrong thing. That's called a logic error, and this is where tests come into play. The idea is to make sure that your logic is doing what you said it's doing. Okay, so what you're doing is and generally you do this like on a piece by piece or unit by unit style, which is referred to as unit testing. There are other types of testing like end-to-end testing where you test several steps. Instead of just testing one function, you might test like the whole process. So you clicking a button will lead to this form popping up, and then when I fill out that form and submit it, this is going to cause this API call. And what you do is you write a series of checks against that whole process. Okay, and then you need a library like Cypress to simulate all those like button clicks and whatnot. Okay, that's going to be a little bit more beyond what I'm going to do in this video. We're going to focus more on unit testing. So again, testing like one function at a time to make sure that this function does what it's supposed to do. Okay, so in this case, what I want to do is this is why you generally write all your functions in separate files. And then in here, like I would export the function. Okay, and then I would have like a test file for that. So we'll say add tests.js. Okay, and that kind of reminds me of a question. Is there how does this have like a built-in like testing command? Here we go. Okay, so node supports running in watch mode, pass the watch flag, or so the test flag can be invoked. Flag. Default nodes will recursively search directory for JavaScript profiles matching a specific naming convention. Matching files that test execute, so it's just called like test. Okay, test runner execution module. The directory named test is encountered. The test runner will recursively for all. Okay, so basically what we can do is we can make a folder called tests. Well, that's not a folder. A folder called tests. Okay, and then we can, put our files in there, our test files. Okay, so then what I would do here is I'm going to import test from, well, actually, it's not a module, so const test equals require test. Okay, and then I want to import the function, so import const add nums equals require /add.js. Okay, so basically the idea is you have to import the testing suite and the thing you want to test into the file. Okay, so now let's like write some tests. Okay, and you can see here like the syntax. So the idea here is you're going to use this test function, so test, and this test function takes 2 arguments: a name for the test. So say we're testing add nums. So first we want to see like, okay, does it add? Okay, does it add up? And then what you do is you pass a callback, okay, which receives this argument t. Okay, and the idea here is we're going to write a bunch of tests. Okay, and generally each test is referred to as an assertion. So the idea is you're saying, given this expression should always equal this. Okay, if our code is working, this should equal this. Okay, so it would be like assert dot. Okay, and you can see like there's a bunch of stuff here. Let's see, I don't know if that's picking up on exactly what we're doing here. Oh, I see, because it changed this object here. Assert dot. Okay, let's see what happens if I do t dot. T dot. Yep. Assert dot. VS Code. Assert dot strict equal. And the idea here is basically saying that whatever the first argument is has to equal the second argument. Okay, so the idea here is here's where I would test my function. I'm going to say, hey, add nums. If I take add nums and do 1, 1, the result of that should be 2. Okay, so it's going to run that test. Okay, and I could actually put multiple tests in this bucket. Okay, so now let's see what happens if I run the command. So if I do like node dash dash test. Okay, so sit here. Let's just kind of scroll through this. It says node tab version subtest. So see it found the file. Okay, cannot find module test. Okay, and wait, do I have to do it as a node module? Go back to the docs here. See, const test equals required node test. Oh, okay, you have to do it as node test. Okay, I see. Node test. There we go. So that's what it wanted me to do. So let's run that again. Okay. So now let's read through this output. Okay, so basically it's saying, hey, add. Okay, so it's picking up on there's a subtest. Okay. Export function, num syntax unexpected token export. Oh, that's right, because that's not a module. So this should be, I should be doing this, module.exports equals add nums. Because again, that's not so let's try that again. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so it picks up on the subtest. Okay. And it says uncaught cannot read properties of undefined. Okay, and that's reading value. Error, so we read through this, kind of see where the error is. Stack, internal test runner, tap parser. So it picks up on the test, not okay 1, that's fine. Now again, that should fail because it's not adding, but let's see if I make it right. Does it suddenly now pass? Let's see here. Okay, still fails, so something else is going on wrong here. Question is where? Oops, I forgot to import assert. That's, I think, the problem. So const assert equals require node assert. I was wondering where that assert function was coming from. So there we go. So let's try this again. Still not liking it. Okay, figured out what was wrong. For some reason, if like there's a console.log anywhere, so basically you don't want any console logs in the file that declares your function, and you don't want any console.logs in your tests, so that way it doesn't get confused when it's trying to do the output. But now it works. Okay, so you see, like, first let's do, right now it passed. So basically, like I'm saying, does it add up? It runs a test, so it's gonna run to say, hey, like, does this function call equal this value? If it's true, then it passed a test. So you see there's one test, and it was passed. So in this case, I might want to run multiple tests. So again, in this block here, okay, I would just run multiple tests. So we'll say strict equals, and this would be like, make that 2. So this should be 3. You know, it tests different scenarios out. There's not really many scenarios you can really test when you're just adding 2 numbers, but imagine like division, where you might want to test, hey, what happens if they divide by 0? Did you plan for that? Okay, you would create different tests for different scenarios to make sure that that this function will always work for all the expected scenarios and any edge cases that you might anticipate. So that way, if later on somebody changes the function, you can run the test again and you can say, hey, did you go from working to not working? Because a lot of times you change, you might be working on a function that someone created a long time ago. You edit it to address the thing you're doing now, but then you broke some sort of functionality that was intended when it was created that you weren't aware of. So the test will kind of make sure that, hey, you don't do that. Okay, so now, again, if I run this test, it's still going to be 2 pass tests. So like, see here, oh, nope, add nums to test, does that up? Yep, pass 1. Okay, but now let's see here, let's change the function and see what happens when I make it fail. So let's make it subtract. And then if I do this, okay, see now the test fails. So I can see that, hey, there was 1 test and the test failed. Okay, and then basically what I would do is I would just keep making more in the test file. I can just keep making more and more tests. Okay, and maybe I don't want to write a test like this. Maybe what I decide, I want to do this. I want to say like, okay, test.describe. Okay, and what describe does is just allows you to write your test in a way that's a little bit more easier to read. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to describe add nums. Okay, and then we'll say describe test dot. Actually, let me double check the syntax for the describe. Just make sure that I'm talking. Control F, describe. Here we go. Actually, I want to go back up. Here we go. Okay, so you will see you're going to pass an arrow function, so that'll be the second argument. Then this function is where all your tests will be. And then we would use like test.it. Okay, again, if I don't want to write test.it or test.describe, I could destructure it from here. Actually, well, no, that's not supposed to be there. Okay. But, we'll just use the test object. So test.it. So basically I'm saying I want to describe it. So I'm saying, hey, add nums should add correctly. Okay. And then that receives another arrow function. And then I would write my test in there. So assert dot strict equal. Okay. And again, I can see what all the different options are. Like, should they be equal, strict equal? Okay, I should get an okay back from like deep equal. If error, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. Okay, so strict equal. We're going to say, hey, if add nums, if we take 2 and 2 and add them together, what I should get back is 4. Okay, so there's my assertion. And then it's going to test. Is that true? Okay, I said I failed the test. Did I fix, is the function still broken? Yeah, the function's still broken because it doesn't add right now. So now I know, oh, this failed my test. Let me go examine the function to make sure to see where that problem is coming from. Okay, then I adjust the function. I run the test again. Okay, and you can see like, hey, look, I have 1 test and it passed. But then when I read up here, you'll see it's like a little bit better. See, it says add nums should add correctly. Okay, so you can see like, I can see the way that this is written. I can see, okay, this is the thing we're testing under the describe, and this is the aspect of it that we are testing in the it. Okay, and then basically when you're reading the results of your test, you can better understand sort of like, okay, what tests are you running? Okay, so that's another way you can kind of use the suite. Yeah, so basically for basic unit testing, this kind of does the job. But again, there's a lot of stuff that comes with libraries like Jest, Mocha, Chai, Cypress, to do a lot of other cool stuff that you can then use. But this hopefully gives you a better idea of like the purpose of testing and the types of errors you can get. My name is Alex Merced. Have a great day and enjoy.